So what does it really take to change human behavior so that you can change human results?
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Well, to help answer that is my good friend and colleague. He's a well-known expert on strategic leadership. He coaches and trains over 700 top-level CEOs and executives per year. Don Schmincke, welcome to the show. And for those of you listening to this, we are live right now on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn and a few other places. But this is also the Business Growth Podcast. So I'm going to say the URL so that people listening can go to it. So you can check him out later at sagaleadership.com. So SAGA leadership.com. Don, welcome to Fordify Live. How do you change human behavior so you can get better results? Now that's something that everybody talks about, but very, very few people can actually do it.
Well, it came out, when I ended up at Hopkins, I left MIT. I was a planetary physicist. I'm not supposed to be doing this work. But at Hopkins,
did I hear that right? A planetary physicist?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Go for it.
What am I doing here? But at Hopkins, and when I was at the grad school there, I was teaching, and I got attached to the MBA program, and they were complaining about these failure rates of management theory. And so I started looking at that, and there were literally millions of articles written on this. And I thought they asked me, why is management theory failing to implement? And we started looking at the genetic, anthropological, biological part of our species. And that's what the whole thing took off on. And then Oxford let me use this ancient manuscript for training the samurai. That became a bestseller. So what I've been doing now is doing more research into how to lead humans from a cellular level. And so we started growing companies 2 or 3 times their size. And that's when I knew we wanted something. And that's what we do. I teach I teach that, and we implement it. But it's really based on how to trigger the decisions and behavior of humans by altering their beliefs. And a lot of our beliefs can be altered if we understand our genetic design as a species.
So it sounds fascinating, a little bit over my head for someone who's simple. Just teasing a little bit. I don't think I'm simple, but I like to break things down into simple. What are some of the strategies that you've seen now that you've been in this for decades, and you've been working with all these organizations? What are some of the strategies that maybe are well adapted but don't work? Theories that people are trying to implement that don't work. Like in the 70s and 80s, it was command and control. When I grew up and had all my businesses from the time I was 15, the businesses I worked for and mine were basically command and control. They weren't really cohesive leadership, really great cultures like we are now, and making sure we're taking care of everybody's needs. And it wasn't like that back then. But as you work with these individuals, what are some of the barriers or blocks or beliefs that they have that you've got to, eradicate before they can even hear anything new?
Well, generally we look at the beliefs like strategy itself. Most strategic plans fail, and you can see the literature on it. But the thing is that they're failing because they're not strategic, and the belief shift is that they're tactical. And so most strategic plans are tactical, not strategic. And strategy is really around altering beliefs. It's really around intuition. When I look at these companies that start up, and all the management consultants say they're never going to make it, and then this company rises and dominates the market, I think that's the story. What were they doing? How do you succeed by violating best practices? That's a book that should be published.
Yeah, I was just saying that's how do you succeed by violating best practices. I'm gonna, if you see me looking down today, I'm gonna be taking a lot of notes because I do these interviews, and I tell my audiences, I do these interviews really so I can learn, but also our viewers and listeners can learn. So go ahead, continue, please.
Yeah, sure. And so when we went to look at that, we began to see that they were using intuition, not analysis. Now, analysis is great, and you need your SWOT analysis and all that, but that's tactical. If your strategy for winning is not identified in terms of what it means and how you're going to do it, it doesn't matter what your SWOT shows. So by intuiting your way to outmaneuver, let's say, to use military terms, to outmaneuver the enemy by out-intuiting them, that's a great place to begin. Because once you've got what we call a compelling saga, we stole it from the Vikings, you can capture that winningness in some sort of passionate articulation, some communication that allows them to believe that there's something so formidable ahead, we need each other to achieve it. And we're willing to do two things that they don't teach us in business school, and that is suffer and sacrifice. So this sounds very demotivational.
No, I think keep going. This is, I mean, and for those of you listening, watching, type things into the chat. We'll be answering them live here as we go through this. So suffering and what was the other one?
Sacrifice.
So I'm going to use this as my own little hot seat. So I've got an agency. I feel like I've suffered and sacrificed. I mean, as a keynote speaker and expert, my fees are high like yours. They're not cheap. And it's so profitable, right? When an organization comes and I'll be flying out tomorrow to go speak to another conference. The fee's high. I speak for an hour. I add great value. It's scalable to the organization. It's not about the money. It's about the result. But then I have an organization where I have a bunch of employees and I've sacrificed by taking money from the income from that and feeding it to the beast to make the beast work. And as a business growth guy, I mean, I understand chart of accounts, I understand financial statements and income statements. And I mean, I'm on the circuit talking about business growth. That's what I'm known for. On the screen, you can see my titles, business growth. So I certainly understand it. So how do you know when enough's enough and you need to pull the plug? Because I think every entrepreneur can relate to suffering and sacrifice.
Well, it's funny because I as you know, because we met earlier in the group, I have this new book coming out in October called Winners and Losers, and we're dispelling all the myths of entrepreneurship. There's a section there on perseverance is a virtue until it's not. In other words, sometimes we should pull the plug, and how do we know when to do that? But the point is that in terms of suffering and sacrifice, I find that most CEOs and C-levels are suffering and sacrificing alone. And the whole point throughout history was to get people to join you.
Got it.
And that's where it is, because we're like in this happy employee revolution. I'm like, you know what? I know this is politically incorrect, but I think we went overboard on the happy employee movement.
Yeah. And for purposes of this, for full disclaimer, everybody, no hate mail. This is our show. We can say whatever we want. So we'll keep it G-rated, some GP rated, PG rated, excuse me. But this is for information and educational purposes only. So I'm with you. I mean, the entitlement woke, and I use the term snowflake, and then I get all kinds of hate mail because to me, just to detour where you tell me about this, when I say the word snowflake, I'm just talking about someone who's thin-skinned and entitlement mentality. So if there's a different definition out there, everybody, and I somehow offended everybody, let it go. It's not what this is about. Let's get back to sacrificing and continue. I keep interrupting you, but I have these thoughts and I want to make sure I put it in there.
No, you're right there in the zone, because we ran into this in our research at Hopkins, and that because I started seeing this evidence, I wasn't sure why we weren't teaching it, because I think we went a little overboard on the happy employee movement. So we're so focused on happy employees, we're not focused on winning. And so I see a lot of executives who feel alone because they're suffering and sacrificing alone. And so what we did in our research is to say, okay, for thousands of years, and what medically can be proven biologically around our species, to be able to get other humans to join us. Because when I wrote that samurai book back in the 90s, I was enjoying learning how they use death as power to unhook the ego and to be able to die for a cause. And those are the things we should be teaching in leadership, because, put it this way, I'd rather have a team that has bravery and honor. Now, those are two words we don't teach a lot in business school.
That's for sure.
Bravery and honor are willing to suffer and sacrifice together for a cause, and put that team up against a happy employee team any day of the week.
I want to lean into that. So, I mean, if anybody's watching this is an entrepreneur or franchise brand or franchisee, they absolutely understand this. I mean, with the challenges of supply chain issues, finding, retaining, and attracting top talent, especially in a franchise brand. And I don't only speak to franchise brands, but I work a lot with franchise brands. And, they end up having their frontline employees, which are sometimes their first or second job. And they come in totally unprepared, even if they have a college degree. It's crazy. I mean, I've got a dozen employees. Every single one of them has a college degree. And it just shocks me that they can't format a letter with basic paragraph spacing and editing. I mean, I won't go off that tangent. But I think that every business owner can agree that they want their team to buy into their mission, vision, and values. They want them to be a cohesive team. I would much rather have a brave team charging ahead than just a happy team for just the purposes of being happy. The other day, we were talking about, because culture is something we worked hard on. We have three things. We want a happy bank account, happy clients, and happy team. So, if we just take care of the team, then other things suffer. If we just take care of the clients, then the team's upset because they're working 90 million hours. And if we just focus on the money, then no one's happy, and it's the wrong purpose, right?
Yeah.
But we were talking to my team, and we had a client problem. We had messed up on moving a website to a server, and it was our fault. I mean, their site went down for 45 minutes, and it shouldn't have gone down. And I took responsibility and told the client, "Hey, I'm sorry. Thank God it wasn't during peak hours." But we came up with it. Well, I came to my team, and I was kind of command and control. For those of you that know me, I mean, I was direct. I'm like, "Hey guys, this is someone's lifeline. We cannot make this go down." And then later, one of the employees said, "Well, you were kind of rough on us, and it didn't really make us feel good." And I had to bite my tongue, because I was like, interesting perspective. Instead of concerning about the fact that someone's business was offline for 45 minutes, which means no, they can't do a shopping cart, they can't get a lead, they can't get a subscriber, they can't get anything done. So it was just interesting, their perspective, that they weren't thinking that way. Now, that may be a problem that I have created, Don, by not creating that Bravery team. So if you have an organization, so here's what I'm looking for from a consulting standpoint. If they agree they want this brave and powerful team, how do they implement, or what's the first book they should read from you, or what's the first step they should take to, one, identify if they have a problem, which I'm sure they do, and then to bridge that gap to creating a team that really is willing to go against those people that are just happy? Because I would agree, if I had a choice between a happy team and a brave team that was all cohesive, I'd go brave every day.
Yeah. I find that we work with companies because we want to see their performance double or triple, or their sales double or triple within 2 years. So we're looking for, like, what are the trigger points? But the one that keeps coming up is they really don't have a strategy. In other words, they haven't really defined what winning means to them and how they're going to do it. And by how they're going to do it is like, hey, where's the battlefield tomorrow? Who's the enemy there? And how do we outmaneuver that enemy? Now, I use military terms because that's the most documented industry in the world.
I'm good with that. And for those of you listening, it's a metaphor. Let it go. Keep going.
Right. Because once you have winning, then the key is, am I the only one knowing what that means? Or is everyone in battle with me? Do they understand too? Because they need to understand. So then the next step is translating that to some sort of compelling saga that everybody buys into. We know what winning means, how we're going to do it, and how I contribute to it. So at that point, it's easier to get to the point where, and this is what you want to be able to do, when there's something wrong with the customer, they're embarrassed. They're coming to you saying they're feeling bad because of what happened, not because of what you said to them. See, that's getting them aligned into the battle. And then you get into issues of structure and culture and all those other elements, which are easier to get to, because even in culture change, we go through all these we go into clients, they've had their umpteenth consultant, they still have a culture change problem, it's fragmented. And we say, well, did they use any trigger, any tribal grouping instincts? It's like, what are you talking about? I said, humans group naturally for millions of years. Did they use any of that? No.
No, I would say no. I'm so sure I didn't. I mean, I've got some of my team members are on the Bravery side, and some of them I'm going to be getting the next book and implementing those strategies. But keep going.
So what it is that, humans like to group around, and it's funny because I do these workshops with customers. So a CEO hear me talk, they'll say, do this whole thing for my management team. So I'll go in and we hit this point of like, what are your symbols, rituals, and magic in your tribe? And it's like, oh my God, I don't even know. I said, because if you're altering your beliefs, you have to alter your symbols and your rituals and the magic of the tribe. And the magic are these magic moments and mythologies. So I finished this workshop and I get a call the next day. VP of HR's total panic. He goes, hey, Don, Frank, our CEO's got a crowbar and he's ripping shit off the walls. I'll set it.
Right. Oh, it's okay. You can say shit. I'll just beep it later for those people. Keep going.
Okay. And there's going to be a lot of beeps coming out of this. I work with a lot of CEOs.
Let it go.
But what was interesting is I put him on the phone. I said, what's going on? He goes, you know what? It was great. We got all our issues out. We had this whole 7-step framework. I loved it. We're moving forward, but I couldn't figure out why they're resisting TikTok and Instagram, and I got an advertising agency, and I'm pushing and pushing, and I realized my hallway has symbols in it. I said, well, what are the symbols? The awards that we've won over the years for our Yellow Pages advertising.
Oh, interesting.
And I tell you, when he pulled in the next day, pulled a crowbar out of the trunk of his car and started ripping that stuff off, that changed more beliefs than any speech he could have given, any poster he could have hung up. So I think that's the point, is we're missing these instinctive levels to take our companies to higher performance, because we're just getting distracted by these theories where a lot of these experts have never doubled the size of a company. They've never driven it that way. And so anyway, that's
No, so I was writing it down. I was taking notes. So you had symbols, rituals. What was the third word?
Magic, the mythologies.
The mythologies.
Mythologies. Because organizations run off mythology. In fact, I just did this blog post. So you guys inspire me. I mean, Ford, you inspire me so much. A lot of what I'm doing, I'm listening to you. And so I started putting these blog posts together. And there's one that it's all about management myth busting. So the management myth I busted was how authenticity works, how it inspires us. So everybody's the authentic leader. And then I said, well, let's take a look at organizations and how authentic is their story. And I said, let's pick one. And I picked the United States. This country was birthed on a whole myth. And I did it after 4th of July, so I wouldn't piss too many people off.
Right.
And so much fun going into this research that had been exposed here, and mostly academically, that there weren't a bunch of guys in the room on July 4th. That never happened. There was only 2 guys. It was John Hancock and Thompson, the secretary. It took years to get the friggin' signatures, but it kind of and it was done on. It was voted on July 2nd. And when John Adams a letter to his lawyer found the discrepancy, the historian changed his letter to fit July 4th. It was so freaking crazy. As we went through this, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So I wrote this blog post, and the whole point was, it's okay. Myths help drive humans. I mean, the birth of companies. Sometimes CEOs are like, well, that didn't happen, but I'm going to go with it because it's a great story, right? So we are still tribal. And I think the more we embrace our biology instead of ignore it, the more what we have found helps drive sales and performance faster and better.
Yeah, when I work with organizations, I look at 3 things. I look at mindset, strategies, and tactics. And, I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I've had 17 different companies, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter what the organization is, whether it's business to business or business to consumer, or any industry, whenever we're trying to make a change in an organization to take them from where they are to where they want to go, there's that gap. And I found that mindset's first in the work I do. Now, I'm not talking about the leadership and SWOT and doing analysis, but they have to be open-minded. They have to be growth-minded. And I know that Carol Dweck wrote that book, Mindset, and so she's kind of coined that, but she doesn't own that. That's nothing new, right? And so I know the mindset's the first part. They've got to really be open to it. And I know that the first part is getting the C-level executives all on the same page before you work with the staff. Because if they ever want me to come in and just work with the staff, you can't make change because the leadership doesn't have the same thing. So mindset's number 1 on the whole organization. Now, strategy, I want to go into in a second with you on your definition of strategy, so that because I think that even me and other people may have strategy. What does it really mean to have a real strategy, as opposed to they think that they have a strategy, but they really have a series of tactics. So to me, the tactic is what are you going to do on a Thursday morning at 9 a.m.? What are the steps? But for me, strategy is the North Star, the vision. How are you measuring success? But how do you define strategy in the organizations so that the teams you're working with or the leaderships you're working with, they understand that they've got to start there? Assuming they've got the mindset part checked out and they're open and they want to make a change, what do they do for strategy?
Well, the thing is, the interesting thing you said about mindset is great, because mindset is about beliefs, right? It's about pulling the beliefs together, artfully crafting them, getting them aligned. And what's really kind of great is I've been really privileged that the Pacific Institute, that started by Lou Dobbs, he started the mindset revolution like 50 years ago. And he invented the term mindset, and it was all around belief and changing thinking to change behavior. So they're pulling me in, and I'm loving it because they want me to help them go to the next level too. And I want to do that because they're helping me as well. So I think the point is that once you get the mindset of beliefs down, strategy becomes part of that. In other words, what's our mindset about winning? What's our mindset about how we're going to do it? What's our mindset in understanding what the threats are and how we're going to outmaneuver them? That's all strategic thinking. So I think the mindset piece is correlated, because if mindset stops and it drops into analysis, you've lost it. You lost it at that
Got
point.
it.
Now you're in the tactics. It's the mindset is, what are we believing about what we're doing here and how we're going to win this thing? And that's why you see companies that are leading their markets. I mean, because everybody knew Southwest wasn't going to make it. They were going to fail. Everybody knew Amazon wasn't going to make it. They were going to fail. Well, they've all shut up now. I don't hear them
Right.
talking. But, and you can go through the whole list of other companies like that. So I think the key is the mindset's a good place to start, and you have to drive that into changing the mindset of what strategy means, and what winning means. And a lot of times people don't even think about, oh, well, here's our market segmentation, or we've never done segmentation. I was, well, why are you segmenting that way? Who told you that was right? What if you would challenge your beliefs, your mindset about how you're segmenting and where your market thrust factor is? Are you market focused? Are you product focused? Are you doing an M&A? I mean, these are all different battlefields, and they all have different enemies. And we think enemies are rivals. It's like, well, what's your mindset about rivals? It's like, I see companies dying all the time because of the old Porter stuff, like substitute products or supply chain, but also new things. I mean, technology is moving in. Information weaponry moving. I mean, pick one. You can't hit them all. But this is where the mindset, it becomes exciting, because when they come up with winning, now they're more powerful, because you're not going to win by out analyzing your competition. You're going to win by out thinking them, out believing them.
And driving that belief through the organization is so essential.
Exactly.
And getting rid of those, or freeing them up for new opportunities that aren't on board. I mean, literally, I've been in organizations before where, maybe it was a family business or maybe it was a partnership, and they have two different belief systems about what success looks like. And I'm never invested in saying, oh, it needs to be this or this. It's just, first, let's define what winning looks like. And then what are we going to do to get there? And how do we instill those beliefs? And, I'm popular for saying, if you have a belief that isn't serving you, then it's time to get some new beliefs. And I don't know where I've heard that, Randy Gage or something probably years ago said that to me. And I've worked with him for so many decades, but it's so true. I mean, I think about that all the time. So whenever I hit an obstacle, those things that I've read and fed my mind with for years come up. Oh, well, maybe I have a belief that isn't serving me. Let me get some new beliefs. Or, it's not what I know, it's how well I execute. Because we all know what we need to do. I think that everybody watching today and listening to this knows probably what the highest and best use of their time is, but what are they allowing to get in the way, that they've structured their life in such a way that those other things have become a priority, as opposed to the things that are the most important to work on. What closing thoughts would you have? For those of you listening, again, you can check down out. You can go to LinkedIn, but go to Saga Leadership, SAGA leadership.com. He's well known. He's got best-selling books and lots of resources. But what closing thoughts would you have to kind of put a bow on today's topic?
I think strategic success is around learning, and that, of course, means making a lot of mistakes. And when I went through the research for this next book, it was amazing how many successful CEOs and entrepreneurs out there, their history was not littered with successes and right decisions. It was all mistakes and failures. And so I think we should be teaching how to fail more powerfully.
I totally agree. Well, we go live, everybody. Fordify Live, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Central, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, excuse me. So thanks so much, Don, for being here today. It was great talking to you in the green room before we started the live episode today. And I look forward to seeing you on our next $1 Million Speakers group, because we're both in that group, and at the National Speakers Association events, and again on the circuit too.
Yes.